This morning's session, Russian economy challenges, solutions, consequences. Let me warn you from the start, it's a pretty challenging day for everybody, for economists, for politicians. The Collegium of the Ministry of Finance is having its session, and some of the participants of this session are to attend it. Also, the Oil and Gas Forum is opening today, and some of us will have to be there. Yesterday, I had a chance to note that these dates, 19th and 20th of April, are popular with some organizers. Alexei Kudrin said when he was Minister of Finance, he never actually planned or scheduled the Collegium of the Ministry of Finance when the HSC conference was held. So please recommend to the Ministry of Finance to never do it again. By way of introduction, I would like to note that we are interested in the state of investment and business climate, and despite the rankings like Doing Business it shows that the business climate is improving, but at the same time public surveys and the business sentiment and official sentiments tell us that the progress is not extremely big, and overall the business climate is on the decline. And at our Congress of Russian entrepreneurs and industrialists, we presented to President Putin results of voting during the Congress, and we have identified issues of concern to the Russian business and seen by the Russian business as key anti-crisis measures. The top-ranking issue was to increase predictability of Russia's government policy. The feeling that Russian business feels there's a lack of long-term targets and orientations. Short-term stability of the Russian economy was articulated yesterday. So the economy was stable at the moment of saying these things. But we need also, it is not easy to look at to see what the economy will be like within 5 years. So stability cannot be short-term, of course. At the same time, strategic planner horizon has been reduced. It's good. The Prime Minister said yesterday they are going back to 3-year budgeting and budget planning for 3 years. Again, enhancing predictability of what the government is doing would be good. At the same time, drafting long-term strategic documents is not in the pipeline, and the Russian business is not fully involved. There are cases where the regulatory impact assessment procedures are quite formalized and do involve businesses. With regard to strategic documents, in many cases involving the business community depends upon the goodwill of the ministries and departments in charge. And we would like to see more institutionalized and formalized procedures in place. Again, it's not only those documents I mentioned. Now they have they started to draft Strategy 2030. Working groups were set up. Nobody will tell us, though, today about the way this work is organized. And we don't know whether there is an intent to continue. So, Alexei, now having received the appropriate mandate, you will streamline this work, since the President said that you will be drafting the government program beyond 2018. So perhaps we will, with your assistance, be informed about this 2030. Again, the survey of the businesses relieving the administrative burden, mitigating the administrative burden of businesses. There are some roadmaps adopted to streamline oversight activity for 2016-18. Some of the measures to reduce administrative burdens have been implemented, but the business risks continue to be high, so they have not yet stopped harassing business. Otherwise, the president would not have set up a working group for interaction of businesses and law enforcement agencies. Literally, it calls a group on monitoring law enforcement practice. Hopefully, by the end of this month, they will come up with some deliverables. With regard to oversight activity, Mr. Abizov will hopefully report to us on the progress. Amidst the crisis, there are issues like reducing the policy rate, reducing the fiscal load. The chair of the central bank is explaining us that once the conditions are in place, the policy rate will be reduced. At the same time, we do understand that raising and getting loans with restricted access to foreign capital markets and 15% interest rate is perhaps too much for some domestic sectors, with profitability rate in machine building of 2+%. And in many sectors, it's not feasible to use credit resources, and reducing the policy rate to one digit at next year at the latest is necessary, and so far we need to increase institutional support, like the funds, various funds to support. With regard to relieving and easing the fiscal burden on businesses, we suggested that we create, together with the Ministry of Finance, a single methodology to understand what else is there besides the taxes and unified social tax. There are many novelties that the government and MPs are trying to come up with non-tax burden, and it has been promised to us that the tax burden will not be increased until 2018. But starting 2019, many departments and agencies are planning to raise taxes and non-tax charges. And so our slogan is to reduce the tax level and non-tax charges. Another thing that was raised at our Congress is fair competition through reducing the government's share and government's involvement in the economy. We are not so this grant privatization scheme should not be seen as a grant sale. And the topic of privatization is very much seen through this prism of fiscal interests of the government budget. And if this fails, then not to sell those assets. We believe that the institutional and structural aspect of privatization is no less important, is have some long-term benefits versus fiscal goal objectives. Let me also note yesterday's statement of the Prime Minister, who said that if we implement structural reforms quickly, they may enhance instability of the economy. And yesterday at the plenary session at this conference, Ksenia Yudaeva and Evsei Gurevich were saying that structural reforms should be accelerated. And this is a topic for this very discussion, is quite relevant for this session. So what should we do? To rely on budget-related printing currency, or to carry out reforms right away and not beyond 2018. There's one other special feature of this conference now. It's no longer is grand auditoriums, and we discuss presentations and keynote speakers. You know the names. Akindinova, Kuzminov, Yasin. And I would like to move over to the grand presentation on the results of their study. Yaroslav Kuzminov.
Colleagues, this presentation has been printed out, and you should have copies. Therefore, I'm going to focus on a few things, a few key considerations, and a few reminders. Now, we have a lot of debates amongst economists and politicians regarding our political and economic development, and the deficiency of those debates is quite natural. We talk about the problems of 2016, we talk about the 3-year period. That is, we are thinking about short-term developments. In this context, it's probably going to be useful to take a look at where we are in general. I mean, where Russia is and what our economy is like today. What kind of institutions we have working in our economy over a longer period of time. So we would like to throw a look at the period starting from the new independence of Russian Federation. As we can see, Russia, in terms of PPP, is in the group of Central European countries, way ahead of post-Soviet countries and way ahead of China. This trend line has changed direction because of the latest circumstances. We see it in 2010, and we could see it back to the level of 07-08. Anyways, we are talking about a country with a fairly high level of per capita income, with high level of economic development. Why reporters and economists keep saying that we are similar to Poland? We have pictures similar to Czech Republic. This cannot be, because we have different income distribution system. According to Gini index, we in China are over 40, and our East European partners are at the level of 30 to 35. That's a big difference, and that creates different feelings, different assessments. There are other parameters that make us different too. One of them is inflation. In terms of inflation, if you compare Russia to the same countries as we compared it to before, Germany, China, and Poland, we don't look great. Inflation in Russia over the whole period when Putin was the president was above 10%. Our economy has adjusted to high level of inflation, a significant inflation, if I may put it that way. And we also see a low level of competition in main markets, which contributes to that. In terms of competitive level in the main markets, Russia is in the same bad state as in case of inflation. In global competitiveness index, we are significantly below our competition. This can be explained by a high level of government involvement in the economy. This is one parameter that we have found. This is the share of government in top 10 companies. You can see China in this chart, which is not typical because they have a much more competitive economy. Still, the level of government involvement is excessive. And this chart is very typical of the big picture. One more thing typical for Russia is the size of the shadow economy. We have a unique labor market. We have a unique situation in small and medium-sized businesses. The shadow economy is growing slightly slower than economy in general. You can see that the size of shadow economy in Russia is shrinking slowly. It's just so 7 percentage point reduction over 7 years. That is 1 percentage point per annum. You can see the chart that covers the period till 2007. According to indirect data, which we get, we now have an opposite trend, and the share of shadow economy has begun to rise again. The only comfort that we see is that we are making progress in the government policies regarding entrepreneurship in line with the doing business data. We have made obvious progress in recent years, which is an outcome of a serious government focus on this. Unfortunately, this progress in doing business has happened at the time when we have experienced other types of negative things, and it has not had a big impact on the business climate. You can see it from the market capitalization of Russian companies. You can see that we are way behind developed economies. We are behind China. This is recognized by the global economic community, and this is something that really concerns us. There are several different things that we see in this picture. It's multifaceted. In 2000s, we have seen some excellent, outstanding results. The economy has grown way above the Soviet record numbers in terms of performance and living standards. We have reduced the gap in production and social technologies. We have developed quite a sizable middle class. According to some estimates, it amounts to 40% of the population. That is the share of people who can make economic choices, who can have savings. That is definitely a very positive result, and we should keep that in mind, and we can talk about it openly. However, at the same time, we have seen that the growth of 2000s have been accompanied by conservation of poor institutions. They have survived and they have crystallized. They have become really strong. They have become a foundation for our economic life. We have seen that the government paternalism in many fields has survived and has gotten a second breath. It is a mechanism which is very significant in the society. The existing mechanisms are organized in such a way that the beneficiaries of social programs do not participate in the system. The institutions are such that people are just viewing all those benefits as a free gift from the state. The people, the population, have expectations of guaranteed welfare. Based on that, we see emerging requirements of the voters and reforms which suggest a greater responsibility of citizens get undermined. We also see that the government and local authorities finance the maintenance and capital repairs of the housing, providing government payments of that kind raised expectations of the middle class. In mid-2000s, middle class has ignored many of those social benefits. Now they enjoy them quite a bit. They use them actively and aggressively, and they are not happy about the prospects of paying more for those kinds of services out of their own pocket. This has obvious negative and social consequences. We don't have a mechanism to mobilize private revenues for social programs, and we don't see a lot of savings for that purpose. And that happens against the backdrop of 40% share of citizens who can't afford it. Another poor phenomenon is offshore capitalism. Russia is unique in the way it uses offshore arrangements. In other countries, offshore arrangements are used due to tax benefits. In Russia, it has to do with a high level of risk. People get an insurance that way when they go offshore. When using foreign jurisdictions to minimize risks, this is something typical for economies with low level of development compared to Russia. And this is one systemic unfavorable factor for the economic development of our country. Higher risks of losing property has to do with the way businesses select projects, with the way they look at high-risk projects, which is something I'm going to talk about later. Another unique feature of Russian economy is high level of inflation, which is something I said earlier. All these three factors give a Russian business community high appetite for yields or profitability. And many business people are looking at an option of moving their money abroad. In countries with developed market economies, 10 to 15% of profit is a norm for new projects. In Russia, the threshold level is 20 or even 30%. Sustainable source of such profitability are few. We're talking about mineral resources, related businesses, or we're looking at a possible monopoly situation where the government is now trying to constrain such monopolies, or it has to be a very innovative business with new types of goods. But this is not something that we are famous for. The share of innovative businesses in Russia is smaller than that in Greece. we see that initially there was no balance in the market. There were a lot of asymmetries. One example is retail trade in big cities in Russia. The reaction of the system to the growing oil and gas related revenues has given a start to a new phenomenon, that is three-sector economy. In the FAT years, we have seen three macro sectors that have different relations and that have different ways of getting rent from oil and gas resources. This chart is a good illustration. Besides those, there's also a budget-related sector which deals with non-tradable goods and services. You can see these three sectors, the differences between them in the yields they're getting from sales. They all look like this. We see that big commodity businesses and related companies like wholesalers, pipeline operators, and this thing and the other, they have 2 to 3 times higher profitability compared to other types of businesses. And that creates a very interesting effect on other sectors. On the one hand, the government began to take that rent away. Since 2003, 2004, they have developed appropriate mechanisms for that. What the government does with this rent, essentially it uses this money through the efforts of Mr. Kurin, present here, to the reserve fund, creating a safety cushion. Second of all, this money was used to address social problems, and we have seen serious increase of funding of the pension system and healthcare system. The third area where the money went is very interesting. The government has essentially started giving subsidies to the big business, machine building industry, road building. Big businesses were brought into the sectors that have not promised high yields by offering government support through PPP arrangements, and macroeconomically that translated into pouring some resources through the government channels, not through natural growth. We saw subsidies given to the businesses that agreed to work in the other sectors with a lower level of profitability. We have seen a government support program for machine building industry. We had a government support system for infrastructure development projects. As a result, we ended up with these two sectors. One of these sectors is really getting profits which gave them an insurance, and the other sector gets money from the government. This is not a stable system, and we see that this system is falling apart since 2013, when the profitability in commodity sector fell by 25%, and today the scale of this redistribution, the scale of subsidies from the state through redistribution of resources is no longer there. There is yet another sector, small and medium-sized businesses that have significantly lower level of profitability. There are two reasons for that. On the one hand, SMBs have no way of exporting capital. Of course, one can move to a new location, but one wouldn't have enough money to start a new business. You can only live as a private citizen. So owners of medium-sized and especially small businesses have to put up with lower profitability because they simply see no alternative. They cannot threaten the government with the fact that they will live, or they can go into the shadow economy. That is the way we see some features of those three segments of the economy. We should see and evaluate the prospects of the economy when the arrangements that we have in place are no longer valid. Most players, the government, business community, citizens are trying to act as if nothing has happened. That is, industry lobbyists are fighting to get the remaining piece of the pie to their industry in the form of government support. Active governors continue to maintain coalitions with big businesses by suppressing competition in the markets where they have influence, and that also is very relevant for procurement system. There's something I missed. One thing that is not often mentioned about Russia, that is forced charity. I have had arguments with a number of colleagues. We were thinking that we're talking about 2 or 3% of the GDP, which is quite a lot. That is about 10% of turnover and 1/4 of profit in several businesses that we looked at as an example. Here's what we're talking about. We see that mostly at a regional level. Heads of regions, mayors of cities, want to raise funds for big social projects, for some charity projects, and they force businesses to make a contribution. They demand that those payments are made. They tell businesses to finance soccer teams or construction projects. Metallurg team has won the Gagarin Cup yesterday, by the way. This extra charges for the business really makes the situation even worse. And this is another bad institution that I wanted to mention in the scope of my presentation. Today, all bad institutions continue to work. As we discussed this situation, we decided to try and see how this system will develop in the new reality. This new reality is not like a crisis of 08, 09. This is not a crisis of an outcast country like many people try to portray it in the West. This is the first point of transition to a new norm where we don't have continuous inflow of profit from oil and gas rent. What are the main preconditions for the new norm. Reduction of inflation down to 3 or 4%, where people can ignore inflation in their pricing policy. Secondly, large and medium-sized businesses should be able to get access to debt. This means that we have to have sources of long-term money inside the country. For big companies, this can be resolved through access to international financial markets. In medium-sized businesses, it's important to have local money. And we have to walk away from those extra charges that have been in the form of forced charity. For business community, it would be an important signal if for 2 or 3 years many cases of opposition between the government and the business community would be resolved in favor of the business community. How the government does it is another issue. For the business community, it would be an important message to see this result, to see this outcome. 5, we need to see dismantling of the system of oversight and control, which is comparable in its negative effect to the negative effect of the judicial and law enforcement systems impact. The outcome of the existing oversight, we're looking at 2% of GDP losses per year. According to some business unions, like Business Russia, such losses are estimated at 5% of the GDP per annum, which is not realistic, I think, but I'm still giving you this number just to show you how modest we are. Let us look at this scenario with the highest level of inertia, when everybody wants to reject anything, when everybody is trying to live by the old rules that people are used to. This is a very typical type of behavior for people. The simplest thing when we have not enough time is to continue to act as before. The government actions would then be looking quite consistent and predictable. Now then, there's one bifurcation point. We have reserves which may last us another 2 years or 3 years, according to different sources, and there is a strong trend in line with which we reproduce at least until the presidentials, all old institutions, and we just use up the reserves that we have accumulated. And this is the model that we see being the foundation of the current government policies. I have said earlier that I'm going to try to talk about long-term processes. Let's imagine that we have used up all reserves. It doesn't matter if we're talking about 2016 or 2018. Regardless, 1886, 1889, what is going to happen then when the reserves are gone? The big non-commodity businesses will have no more government funding. That will freeze up new construction projects in machine building industry. Social programs have the same sources of funding. Freezing them up will result in 30% reduction of funding, which will bring us back to 2006 level. Consumer demand, effective demand will be reduced by 15%, and reduction of effective demand will lead freezing up of the sectors focused on the domestic market, that is retail and food industry and agriculture. It's important to understand what signals business needs to understand that all institutions are not working any longer. I'm talking about understanding, although in big groups there will be more sensitive and less sensitive individuals which persist on living the way they did in the past. So it's not about formal changes. It's about large-scale change of behavior and large-scale change of expectations. Authorities' decisions can be a signal, can be a message, but it may not be sufficient. On the other hand, authorities may not send any messages, and people will just get those signals by watching others, by watching the environment. We are looking at what will be happening in 2 or 3 years following 2016 or 2018. Reduce inflation down to 1 digit with very high probability of staying under 6 or 7%. This may not be enough for the businesses to change their normal behavior, but against the backdrop of reduced demand, even 6 or 7% inflation may be a signal for a reduced level of in-house profitability for new projects. More accessible loans will also be a big signal.
The second factor is the significant worsening of conditions for exporting assets out of the country by Russian businesses. But this is an opportunistic thing. The global attack of the international mass media and governments on the offshores is one of the signals, but not the only one, and everyone present here knows about this. And this factor will work towards the reduction of the required profitability of the Russian business so that they could rebound to the expected mid-level projects. The conclusion I would like to make is that the starting conditions for dismantling the bad institutions of tendency towards the short projects on the part of the large businesses will only be created through the pursuing of the monetary policy of the government without any sharp turns and without the need to mobilize the elites. On the other hand, other necessary changes will require a change in the government's policy that would have been articulated and would be supported by the authority of the president, and the system would have to interact with the judiciary, with the attorney's office, and it would be a rejection of the policy of forced charity, and some activities would have to be done without using the budgetary funds. So one can expect that the transition to the new state would take approximately 10 years, at least 10 years. And so for the next 10 years, we cannot count on a rapid economic growth. And here our estimates are similar to the ones that Mr. Ulukayev articulated recently when he said that we could expect a growth of 2.5% in the next 10 years. The change of policy will be required for the third group of conditions for the new balance, which is to build the national long money institutions that would accumulate the insurance savings of the population and money from the people and would reinvest them in the long-term projects. And I'm talking about a political solution here, or two solutions, by the management or the leadership of the country, and the switch towards the accumulative retirement policy. This is something that may happen by 2018. However, the effect will not be seen in 10 years even, but likely it will be seen several decades later. Dear colleagues, I'm not going to go further into my presentation. Those of you who are interested could analyze it further. We've looked at the current situation, but I believe that to begin this discussion, what I've said should be sufficient. Thank you very much. It was indeed quite sufficient. And about 2/3 of what you said, Yaroslav, that was a very detailed explanation. You could see there an analysis of different alternative scenarios of development, and some political aspects were also touched upon. Mr. Yasin, do you have anything to say now, or would you like to continue listening, and maybe we would then make conclusions later on? I would like everyone to keep in mind the following fact. This presentation that Yaroslav made, and it was co-authored by myself and Ms. Akidinova, this is just one side of the matter. But if what Mr. Shokin has suggested, I think it makes a lot of sense, and I would rather agree with this proposal. So later on, you would have an opportunity to provide comments, especially considering what you just indicated. You would have to moderate this session and would have to conclude it, and Yaroslav will be the keynote speaker and you will be the main facilitator or moderator. So I'd like to give the floor to Alexei Kudrin, and he's got to go very soon. It looks like everyone is about to leave, and he is responsible for the policies that had been implemented for over 10 years. And secondly, he's got a new responsibility for the future policies. Dear colleagues, thank you. I believe that the presentation that was made today was quite interesting. I would call it a warning presentation because the conclusion of this report was a pessimistic prognosis which foresees a 10-year-long stagnation of Russian economy, 2 to 3% growth a year, which is akin to stagnation, which means a reduction of Russia's economy in the world economy, means lagging behind in modernization, and the lagging behind of the development of the strong industries. What I'm trying to see here is why we have approached this situation, what mechanisms are at play here, and those hypotheses that were made during this presentation would require further discussion, such as over unrealistic expectations of profitability as one of the realities of the Russian economy. And based on this, one could see the structure of the investment and the status of certain industries. And maybe not all of the justifications have been presented here so far, and we would certainly like to see some statistical data that underpins those conclusions, but at least this is something that is quite interesting, and this is something that is worth further analysis. I can see here some other important key factors that affect the Russian economy that also impact the burden on the businesses, something that slows down the development of the economy. And when we hear the conclusions made in this presentation, where it is suggested that we move towards the so-called new balance, then we see 5 bullet points. Reduce inflation to 3 to 4% a year. That's number one, which is quite clear. It has been discussed many times before. And further on, we can expect only a 7% inflation rate at the best, and the ability to obtain resources for the SMEs through lending and placing assets on the securities market and access to long money. Rejection of the policy towards forced charity. This is an important consideration in the list of measures of this new balance policy. Number 4, a significant reduction of political and quasi-political risks for the business. And I would like to emphasize that this is a critical factor, and the President has created a working group on the interaction between the government and the business so that new practices and new laws could be put in effect. And that means that the government has already started paying attention to this. And this is one of the key spheres. And the fifth, number 1, is the basically going away from the existing system where the businesses have to interact with the judiciary enforcement authorities in the way they do now. It is something that is indeed quite important. And from the negative standpoint, this is something that has achieved the level of judiciary and enforcement burden on the businesses. So we have the oversight burden and the enforcement burden as well. So one could agree that the authors of this presentation, of this paper, are very close to the target as far as the projections are concerned. That is not an exhaustive list. These 5 factors may contribute to the new balance, but maybe not just on their own. This is something that could merit a further discussion. If one is to highlight other conclusions, that could include the accumulated budgetary liabilities as the result of this rent-based economy and redistribution of ownership. What can be done? What steps need to be taken so that we could wean ourselves off the habit of living with such high income, and who would be affected by this reduction? What I saw in the paper were some items that were of particular interest to me, things that need to be reduced. That includes a reduction in the subsidizing of the economy. I believe that the level at which the economy is subsidized right now by the government is overblown. There are some subsidies that we cannot go away from, let's say agriculture. There are subsidies that support low mortgage interest rates and lending rates for retrofitting industries. They are important, but there are other very ineffectual subsidies that would be required by the financial sector and the VEB, and therefore this level of subsidy should be reduced as the government tries to solve issues, because this is not contributing to a competitive environment. The second path is to minimize the share of government expenses. The government should also be more effective. The reduction of social expenditures is another factor, and the social welfare should be more targeted, and Yaroslav mentioned that and highlighted it. Number 4 is security and defense. It is suggested in the paper that there would be certain changes that would have to be made in that sphere, and I in general agree with this approach. However, if at some point now active steps would be slowed down, as we could see from the paper, the history line has been broken into the period before 2018 and after the 2018, so no expected increase in taxes is going to happen until 2018. However, I don't quite imagine how this is possible, because even this year there were certain tax increases for the oil business, and in some cases a regressive tax scale has been repudiated in some spheres. And I understand this regressive taxation scale would have to be readjusted, and that would be the same as the increase of the tax burden, let's say the non-tax burden, because they are formally not taxes, but that would mean an extra 240 billion rubles in non-tax expenditures or non-tax burden, where the overall situation is already not so good. And again, I'm just citing some of the discussions that are ongoing right now, and I don't know if the government has decided not to pursue these plans, but based on what the Prime Minister said yesterday, it is possible that there would be no tax increases in some of the sectors of the economy. And of course, another very complex issue, something that really strikes me as a very strong conclusion, which is this: if the social expenditures are not reduced, the inflation and non-increase of the funding, this will lead to a reduction of 30 to 35%, which would set us back to 2006 in terms of our social expenditures. This is really a harsh conclusion to make, and not a very pleasant one. And in these circumstances, we would be looking at the degradation of those spheres of the economy that support the quality of the human capital, which is one of the decisive factors of the new economy in the new reality. As a result, I view this paper and the conclusions made in this paper as a warning. And here, I didn't see a program of a kind, some specific steps, although they have been projected here. They need to be discussed. They need to be analyzed further. What has been said may not be sufficient. But since my task and goal here was to take part in the discussion of the paper, I felt I had to say a couple of things about this. On top of what I've already said, let me also mention that I, of course, see as the key challenge for the next 4 years the following situation. If the oil prices remain at the current level of $40 to $43 per barrel, maybe if it goes up to $50 per barrel, even against the liabilities that we had assumed before, the deficit would still be 4.55% of the GDP, which is something that our economy cannot support against the backdrop of the foreign sanctions on the one hand, and getting significant loans like this would certainly contribute to the reduction of the opportunities of the private business in terms of lending. And so the competitiveness for resources would increase. Of course, we could stretch the reserve fund expenditure over a period of 2 to 3 years, but the reserves were created with two objectives in mind. One was to reduce the speed at which the national currency was getting stronger as more investment was coming. This was the key factor that impacts the macroeconomics of Russia back then and now, because nevertheless, the currency flows from the government were still getting stronger, but the ruble was getting stronger and the imports were getting cheaper. The imports were skyrocketing, and our objective was to stop that, stunt that. The second was to use those reserve funds for a period where the oil prices would be dropping, so that we could make up for the gaps in government spending. That was a secondary task, but now it looks like it was one of the key objectives from the standpoint of the political assistance. And we are deferring the reduction in expenditures, and we are putting off the reform in the social sphere, in the pension sphere, in the government spending sphere. This is also something that is slowing down this transition to the new reality and to a new kind of a situation. When we were building the reserve funds, we were saying to ourselves, if things go for the worse and the oil prices drop to 30 and stay there, nobody believed that, of course, at the time, then we would have 3 to 4 years to restructure our policy without inflicting any shocks on the social order and on the government, without having to have most of the government programs that are aimed at supporting businesses or programs that support our defense capabilities. We wouldn't have to reduce pensions or wages. And the reserve fund has been actually playing this role now. Otherwise, we would have to reduce by half our defense spending or slash salaries in the budgetary sphere. So that is something that is a reality today. So one would make a mistake by underestimating the importance of those funds and the scale upon which they are important. However, we still need to move on to another policy, and this is not happening, unfortunately. And if we do not move forward in that direction, then the papers that would be made, like the one made today, would be simply stating the fact. And in conclusion, I would like to say that the president recently said there would be a new group of experts that would be working on analyzing strategic objectives for the nation beyond 2018. This should not be a replacement for any other institutes that are putting together long-term plans for the government. This is going to be in support of those ideas that the president would pick himself, so that those are included in the key strategic documents. And of course, he will be making the final decision on all of these issues, and that is something that would be happening closer to 2018 or more likely after 2018. But what is clear to me, the key factor here would be to build the human capital as the key resource and a factor that would help Russia's competitiveness on the global sphere. The demographics are not good. We see a reduction of population annually between 800,000 to 1 million, and therefore we need to deal with productivity and increase of competitiveness. And when we are moving from the economy of demand to the economy of supply, we are saying this to say that we need to have the goods that would find its consumer. We need to be able to offer something that would be competitive on the internal, domestic, and the global market through the increase in productivity and effectiveness. And when Greece was on everyone's agenda, a lot of leading economists were saying, well, maybe a parallel currency should be introduced in Greece. Maybe we should forgive them some or all of their debts. So the sense was that it was a money factor, but we are now having a situation that is partially similar to the Greece situation. Our productivity levels are fairly low, and we need more money. I'm exaggerating, of course, here. More money to try to sustain ourselves, but in reality we need a different level of productivity or effectiveness. How should we build our institutes in such a way? I'm talking about the judicial institution, enforcement institutions, the ones that support the financial stability of the country, those institutes that are related to innovation, education, the accumulation of the human capital. How should we structure them all in such a way that our overall productivity goes higher, as in the West, where it is twice as high as ours? We can analyze this by looking at the GDP per capita. That is the task at hand right now. Once we have been able to do this, once we have built such a system or a sequence of steps that would lead towards that goal, we would probably have a clear view of the plan or program of how we will be implementing this. It is then that we would be able to say that we will be able to get out of this stagnation trap. At 3 o'clock there would be another section or session here that would be dealing with values, and hopefully something would be suggested to get out of this rut from the standpoint of our mentality and existing practices and customs and habits. And the question that would need to be answered is whether we would be able to build a program in such a way that it would help improve our institutes gradually. And that is the challenge of the day. Thank you. And from the standpoint of investment and the resources that are necessary for this, as always, and it is true for Russia or China, the overall level of investment that is being put together, something that would contribute to the economic growth, is 80% domestic. And the situation is clearly the same now, and this through the investment and through the improvement of stimuli towards investment and saving is one of the key elements of the program that we all need to work upon. Thank you very much. Thank you, Alexei. And I would like to remind you that Alexei is the Dean of the Department of Free Arts and Sciences of the St. Petersburg State University, and therefore he's calling upon the public to participate in this session that will be at 3 o'clock. Is quite understood and very understandable. And there was a section in the paper that dealt with the political aspects of the implementation of the programs that were mentioned. But at this point, I would like to give the floor to Mikhail Abizov, who is the Minister of the Russian Federation. Mikhail Abizov is, among other things, responsible in the government for the preparation of the reform of the oversight and supervisory authorities. And one of the conditions for transition towards a new model, as was indicated in the paper, is the dismantling of the existing system. And the question for you, Mikhail, is when are we going to dismantle it and what is going to be left after the dismantlement? I will try to answer that question as well, but I would like to start by referring to some of the points made in the paper. And I'm not speaking more in the capacity of a minister, but of an expert rather, and therefore I would be at liberty to give a more free assessment of the paper itself and the conclusions made in it. This reminds me of the April conference here at HSC in 2013 when Mr. Kudrin was arguing with Mr. Bilausov, the Minister of Economy back then, in terms of the expectations for the growth of GDP. The government was seeking a 5% increase in the GDP, and Alexei said that you would have to fight for 3%, let alone 5%. This is something that reminds me of that discussion, and I would like to refer back to one of the main conclusions of this paper, which is that for the next 10 years we should be expecting the level of growth for the economy in midterm of about 1.5 to 2%. And Alexei called that a pessimistic scenario, a stagnation-based scenario, and I think we would have to fight for those percentages of the growth. And I'm saying this as an expert. And I'm looking at these parameters as not a pessimistic scenario, but as a fairly pessimistic scenario. And in that sense, I do not quite agree with the assessment made by Mr. Kudrin. I think there would be some middle ground. It would be a realistic scenario. But under today's situation, the parameters are maybe inadequate. And I will say why. They're excessively high. According to the conclusions made by the expert council at the government of the Russian Federation and presented by the experts to the Prime Minister of Russia, the key trends of the economic growth today that are related to the structure of the economy. And based on this, there is support on domestic demand, supported either by the state capital or the private capital, savings and accumulated money. This is something that may be affected by the reduction in the level of savings. And based on this, we could count on a growth of 0.5 to 1% based on the internal domestic demand. So if we want to get over 1% of the growth, again, when we have a situation where the oil prices are where they are, at $40 per barrel, if we take into consideration the budget deficit of 3% that was accepted, we can only count, under this circumstance, on improving our exports as a means to grow the GDP. The commodity markets in mid-term are something that are projected to reach balances, although we shouldn't expect any spikes in terms of demand on the commodity markets. Again, take into consideration the situation on the Chinese economy and the steps taken by the Chinese government towards the improvement of the production of key commodities. And that means we would have to improve our exports at the expense of the high technology sector.
In high-tech sector, there's a high level of competition. The question is, can we build companies for the new Russian economy that can support a high level of supply of technology and products to the international markets? at the time when the structure of Russian economy is showing a low level of domestic competition, which does not stimulate development of new technologies. New technologies only emerge in the highly competitive environment when there is a need for such technologies to get a greater market share to promote products. In Russian Federation, we have low level of competition. There is no stimulus for development of high tech. There are no fundamentals for new innovative companies to emerge. Low competition in the domestic market. So we have a need to create such innovative companies to support sustainable economic growth through exports. This is a trap. This is a vicious circle. And we don't know what the way out for it is. In the presentation that we have heard, I didn't see the answer for this. There was a suggestion that for Russian economy development, it would be important to change some fundamental parameters like inflation, direct and indirect business costs, which should in turn reduce investors' expectations, and we're talking about all the new investors. They should have lower expectations in terms of yields and risks if they were to open a new company. A general approach would not fly. A new investment in big and medium-sized companies are different. They have different features. They have different fundamentals compared to small businesses. Big and medium-sized businesses in medium term will not be prepared to reject conservative investment policy. They will still be looking at 15 at best, or most likely 20+% of profitability. This has to do with their fundamentals, the value of money, risks, like sovereign risks, pressure on business and other expenses. This also has to do with low domestic competition, which gives big companies comfortable areas in which they work. They have a certain level of profitability de facto, and it would take quite a serious impact to change their attitude. As of SMBs, we have just started a big journey, and hopes for an explosive growth would be looking strange against the domestic demand. It means that we would have to expand some of the areas which have already been used by others. So I would not count on any kind of explosive growth. I think as an expert, old instruments for big or small businesses would not work. So we are going to have to develop a new economic policy. It would have to improve institutions, both government and financial types. It is especially true with regard to government's macroeconomic policy. We also would need more pragmatic work by the government to create new economy. I don't want to call it a manually controlled economy, but a lot would have to be done to launch this new kind of economy. We are in a state where some sectors of the economy would have to get a new life, and this would require a lot of custom work. I would like to comment on a few other points in the presentation, like government's commitment with regard to social services. This is one of the fundamental parts of the policy which will really determine which path we will choose for the next 10 to 15 years. Yaroslav Ivanovich said that we have this paternalistic attitude in the society. People are used to getting social benefits that come for free, and people lay responsibility for those services and for the quality of those services on the state. I don't agree. There's no responsibility for quality. Free services usually have a very low quality threshold. If you don't pay for it, you cannot demand a high quality. So we need a more diversified approach there. Social policy would have to be implemented separately for people with low income and for people with medium and higher income. We would have to provide complex social services based on the assumption that we would use co-financing arrangements with high-income people. We have not made much progress there, although the government has made a few attempts. I can remind you that there's been a program of transition to social norms of consumption in utility sector with a differentiation of prices. That is, big households that consume a lot of electricity should pay more than smaller households that consume less electricity. If you want to have 5 TVs, that's fine. You just have to pay for it. The program has not received support from the people. They did not find a good wording. They did not develop a good formula for this program. They have overlooked a few things in the program which really did not make it successful. With my income, I should be paying a different amount compared to people who really live on their pension only. This has to do with all social benefits provided by the state, and this is a big challenge for us, and it's good that it has been identified as one of the subjects for further debates, and this is an area where the government may change its policy. On the issue of supervisory work, in the government work, the main task for medium term is to increase the quality of government work. governance quality has to see serious improvement. Otherwise, we cannot improve the economy structure. We cannot achieve a greater level of growth and greater level of income for the people. This is about government institutions. This is about the implementation of government policies. Improving the quality of institutions is a very specific thing. It has to do with specific areas of government policies. Supervision and oversight is a big functionality implemented by many government organizations. So greater quality there will play a very big role. Costs associated with doing business, direct and indirect, are high. According to experts, we are looking at 2 to 5%. What do we plan to do there? We need to get practical there. I think we have had enough debates on this matter. The government last week has approved a roadmap for development of oversight work, which includes changes in some legal principles and regulations in this domain. We should use a risk-based approach, under which the main control will be focused on high public and state risk areas. We should walk away from mass supervision work. We should focus on high-risk sites. Secondly, we should implement new information technologies that would support remote supervision based on risk profiles. It means that companies will not be visited by individual inspectors, which will spend months in companies' offices demanding positive papers. Everything has to be done in a convenient remote form. In electronic formats. Such oversight and supervision is not science fiction. This is being done already. Rosfin Monitoring and Federal Tax Authority have implemented new information technologies very successfully in their work, and these technologies made our supervisory bodies work transparent and clear, and this also has seriously reduced direct and indirect costs. I can tell you that in government supervision, we have over 240,000 employees. An average salary of an inspector, a person who conducts oversight work, amounts to about 13.5 thousand rubles per month. That is beyond my understanding of the subsistence level. People with that kind of income will have serious corruption risks. So if we are to use remote mode of supervision, it will be easier for the companies which go through the process of verifications, that it would also reduce possibility of corruptive actions. These are just two aspects of the roadmaps. No matter what kind of information technologies we use today, government supervision of oversight, which involves 40 different agencies at the government level, is based on a system of requirements that has been developed over years. Some of it has been inherited from the Soviet period. The requirements are often outdated, and implementation of those requirements makes businesses ineffective and costs businesses very much. Essentially today, high-tech companies are asked to comply with the requirements that have been generated in the 1960s and 1970s. Those requirements have nothing to do with high technologies. They don't make any sense, and they are expensive to abide by. So the main task is to review all those compulsory requirements. We are talking about hundreds of thousands of documents, serious documents. This cannot be accomplished overnight. It's a big piece of work, and expert community has to make a serious contribution to this work. Various unions of business people and entrepreneurs should also make a contribution. Over a few years, we should fix that situation. This is a part of the roadmap. I think this will help us to address the big task we're talking about today. The presentation that we have heard can be seen as optimistic or pessimistic, but it's a good start. It's a good document for the government and not government experts to look at as they develop a new strategy for our development, strategy 2030. I hope we will have a chance to work with Mr. Kurin together on this and come up with the basics of the strategy, then have a general public discussion of this document. I think we need public debates for such strategy with all interested parties being involved. Thank you. Thank you very much. That gives us a lot of food for thought. What do we have next? Vladimir, it's your turn. Thank you. Colleagues, I will join many things that have been said earlier. In High School of Economics, we always have very professional debates, and it's never mixed with ideology. If I were to try to say something that has not been said already, I will start by saying that we know all the answers, but we do not know all the questions. The programs in question are fairly clear. If we bear in mind who we have with us today, and if we stay away from political discussions on the subject of 100 years of development of Russian economy, I think we have to diagnose the problem to understand what's going on, and this would impact the answers and solutions. That's what I'm going to focus on. The main subject of the debates is economic growth and welfare. Welfare comes through economic growth. Economic growth, again, we're talking about medium-term periods, and we want to achieve the rates which will be slightly above world average, higher than in Germany, lower than in China, which again is clear from the current level of economic development, and that is the band within which we should see healthy economic growth. This is an unusual task, and in our debates about the new norm about the current situation, we do not always get a clear picture of the new norm. It's not a new level of oil prices. It's not a current variation of price levels. We are in the lower end of the range of developed economies. And the new reality is all about the question of whether the 25 years of Japanese experience is a part of the mainstream. Is this bright future for all of mankind, or is it not? Over the last 250 years, we have never seen a situation when a developed economy has no growth for 25 years. This really transforms the understanding of the goals of economic policy. If we look at the crisis of 1825, if there's no recession, then economic growth begins. If there's no recession, we see economic growth. Our debates on whether we have reached the bottom or not was based on that. From the Japanese experience, we can see that the economy is not declining, but for a period of time it can see no growth, and this is a more significant conclusion which has high relevance for our current situation in many countries in Europe, and this may be a long-term stagnation. This may be something else. There's been several works on this long-term stagnation. We don't understand how long it's going to last. We do not understand the fundamental causes of this stagnation. There may be four: errors and mistakes in economic policies, new norm, that is that the world has entered a new phase of development, which is quite an exotic thing. Slowdown of economic growth, which has started 250 years ago. If you look at Bob Gardon's works, he stands for this theory. And finally, on top of this, there is a general level of uncertainty which makes investment in the economy less likely. Therefore, the complaints of the Russian businesses of the high interest rates, which make investment impossible, do not make much sense, because they have negative interest rates in Europe, and the situation is not bright. So we see the general trends. Based on this, what can we say about Russia? One, with all the external problems, oil prices and sanctions, the economic slowdown is not directly related to those things. Look at the dynamics of the economic development between 2007 2013. The economy has reached the best Soviet level in 2007, then it has reached pre-crisis level again in 2012, and then it stopped again. It has nothing to do with external shocks. It's very important, because this is a demonstration of the fact that the real mechanisms of previous decades have been well described in Bazarov and Gromov's works. Recovery, growth went on. And that growth stayed in line with that model. Based on this the complexity of the task to achieve growth has to do with contradictions that we see in a number of areas, which make our challenges more difficult. Besides what Yaroslav Ivanovich said about the complexity of social reforms, we are now sitting in a trap. There's a contradiction between long-term and short-term growth tasks. Things that would be good for short-term growths are detrimental for medium-term growth. The policies of 86, 87 gave us a good example. We may see what we have seen in 88, 89, because we see fast growth of sovereign debt and budget deficit. It's hard to recognize and admit, but it's very important. Things which are good for short-term growth really are detrimental for medium-term growth. Economists know this, but it's hard to find a political solution for this. So there's a mismatch between the tasks that government is trying to develop. There's a number of reasons for that, but I won't focus on that. We see problems that have to do with the rate of economic growth. Another important area has to do with macroeconomic situation that we currently live in. This is where we are very different from countries of the West. This is what Yaroslav said. The West is fighting to get out of a stagnation trap. We have an economic decline, plus we have inflation. So we understand from economic theory and generally from history that the way out of a deflation trap has to do with development of a demand economy, whereas the other trap has to be attacked through a development of a supply economy. So it's a matter of choice between Reaganomics and solutions offered by Mr. Bernanke. We again end up in a trap of conflict of interest between short-term and long-term, raising interest rates, budget demand, which was manifested in a number of ways. We have a different situation compared to the United States. We do not issue reserve currency, so people won't buy our currency. Transition from the economy of demand to a supply economy is a big task from a standpoint of building good conditions for economic growth. If I have a few more minutes, I can talk about the factors that slow us down. The structural reform program, which is all about stimulus for the economy, should be based on trying to debottleneck our economy. That is trying to improve performance, which has deteriorated for a number of years. There are several groups of problems, political, social, and economic. For about 8 years, we have seen a decline in the quality of institutions. And the most important problems are social and political. There are objective and subjective things. There's the demographic situation. The working population is declining, which is, again, something unprecedented. economic growth always happened when population was growing and not when it was shrinking. There are sets of solutions that can be deployed to address this situation. If this has never happened in the past, it does not mean that the solution is not possible. There is an issue of migration balance. It's easier to change the country. It's easier to go to another country than change one's own country. Moving to a different location does not necessarily mean physical movement. Many people use other geographies to get health care and other services while they reside in the home country. There are other considerations. Public jobs become more popular than work in private companies. This is another trap, and we have to admit it. There are many political factors which are fairly obvious. They have been mentioned in the presentations. The issue of security, personal security, the issue of property security, the issue of federalism, where again decisions have to be made. We know of many examples where federal type of organization has turned out to be successful. Some countries have not been successful, although they had the same arrangements. We just have to decide what we want to be.
And finally, I wanted to say the following. There are economic factors that are clear. Number one is inflation, which means accessibility to loans, and that means low level of inflation, ineffectiveness of the budgetary system that was highlighted in the presentation, and the structure of the budgetary spending, the archaic nature of the social state, and the various problems with the export structure. These are the problems that need to be sorted out, and each of them can be sorted out in its own way. And there were certain issues that had to be dealt with in 1992. They were technologically easy to deal with, but in order to stabilize the situation macroeconomically, you don't have to be the rocket scientist. You have to be able to assume responsibility. But now the situation from the intellectual standpoint and the political standpoint is much more difficult. And the very last thesis, well, the last point I wanted to make, if the rate of growth, it may not be the important factor. There are four factors that are important. It's the dynamics of the private investment. If those grow, that means that things are moving in the right direction, no matter what the growth rates of the economy are saying to you. It's the change in the export structures, it's the lowering of the inflation and the reduction of the interest rates, plus the changes in the share of the poor segment of the population, and that could indicate where the program that we're working on should go. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Trubensov, Vladimir Trubensov. Thank you, Mr. Yasin. As the other speakers, I agree with most of the conclusions and statements made in the main paper. I would like to suggest one comment. It was mentioned that there is a tweak of the Russian mentality that expects more profitability. I think this is something that is better described by the standard economic explanations rather than the mentality explanation. This expectation of profitability is something that is in reverse proportion to the riskiness of the business project. So this is a reflection of how risky investment in a particular country is. So One could try to sort things out by changing the mentality. However, it would be useful to be able to change the situation by changing some economic parameters in the economy. I take great pleasure in the fact that most of the speakers before me were in agreement. There were two things that Vladimir said in his remarks that prompted me to something that would contradict them, to offer another view on the situation. Let's start with the following. You mentioned that all children want to work in state organizations, but 40% of the economy, according to the paper, are in the shadow, but the government is not in the shades. And if people work there, and there are people that work for that sector of the economy, so I wouldn't overestimate the importance of that factor. Okay, point taken. And plus there are the freelancers. Let's talk about the ones that are rich. The main point that you made, Vladimir, and this is something that caused me a lot of doubts, Russia has faced the phase of this stoppage of the economic growth. This slide shows the dynamics of quarterly growth of the Russian GDP and oil and gas export revenues, the rent proxy. You can see the correlation there. It's almost identical over the last 5 years. How can one say that the oil dynamics do not have anything to do with the growth rates of the Russian economy? There is a correction. It was in the past. This was based on the redistribution of the rent, but right now Russia is at the crossroads. We don't know where to go. There are two potential paths. The rent can come back if the oil prices grow. And as a person working for the oil and gas sector, I can say that if we look at the 5 to 7 term in terms of projection, there is a high degree of probability that the oil prices could be much higher than they are today. So the task at hand for the Russian economy is not to make the same mistakes made in the previous periods, when just a portion of the rent accumulated by the state was redistributed into the oil-related funds, and some of them were spent. It seems to me that this is where the main danger lies. If the oil prices remain low, if the rent remains low, then we would have to make significant changes. But if it grows higher, then we would be faced with another problem, which is something that I'm showing on the screen. If we want the Russian economy to be competitive, we need to change this trend, this dynamics of unit labor costs in Russia. The Russian economy, since 2003, was growing with the growth of per unit labor costs. And an economy like this cannot be feasible and profitable. Nobody would want to invest in such an economy. There would always be an alternative to doing that. In the United States, conversely, such unit labor costs are falling. And I'm not talking about even the transitional economies. So despite all of that, the Russian citizens, the Russian people, are used to the fact that their well-being is growing faster than they're expecting. But you can judge this by looking at the growth of income versus the growth of productivity, which are not correlated. We are improving our lives much faster than we are improving the quality of our work. If the rent is growing, that was a possibility. But now, if the rent doesn't grow, would we have to say no to this? The danger is that if the rent starts growing, we don't have to go back to return to such a model, because with this model, all of the risks that the Russian economy had dealt with will be reproduced again. And the main problem here, as was mentioned, is to move from the consumption-based model and all of the dangers of stimulating domestic demand were highlighted already. We need to move to the model that is based on investment And this is the second lesson we need to learn. And I wish we could learn that lesson when we develop medium-term and long-term strategies. You cannot use some average ranking when you're investigating the investment climate in the nature. We can all rest on our laurels by looking at how we're doing in the doing business rankings. But it's not important what average place the country is occupying in a particular ranking. It's important to look at where it fares worst. And we need to look at how homogeneous are the factors for the champions in the doing business ranking. We would see how inconsistent the Russian economy is, and that would explain to you why the desire to invest in the Russian economy is less than the desire to invest in other economies. And this is where we are lagging behind in many points, and this is something that is contributing to a slowdown. What Mikhail said about the government's efforts to reduce the oversight burden on businesses, but this is a good step, of course, but not everything that needs to be done, because anything that has to do with external trade, foreign trade, it doesn't affect that. But if you look at where Russia was lagging behind other transition economies in the regions, that's exactly where Russia was lagging behind most. That's the foreign trade. Unfortunately, in 2015, those factors were not taken into account in the doing business ranking. But in 2014, Russia was lagging behind in this particular sphere. And the efforts of the open government and the associated structures didn't take this into consideration. And this is something that needs to be changed. And the very last comment I wanted to make is this: if we want to improve the productivity of labor, and we need to do it with a rate that is higher than the growth of wages, it is also important to concurrently improve the effectiveness of the government in helping the economy. And that's where the remarks made by Mr. Avizov are handy as far as the manual operation of the economy. And in any situation, such methods are not appropriate. The competitiveness is a fact that needs to be present everywhere, not just in the economy, but also in the government services sector. The experience of Chile was something that cited along a lot. They were trying to create a competitive system of accredited private agency that would provide all types of services from legal to financial. And this is something I would call a third lesson, the lesson that the Russian government should learn when it goes forward with the development of the economic program that would allow the Russian economy to get out of the former economic rut and move over to a new way of economic reproduction, so to speak. Thank you. With your permission, I will continue the deliberations based on the paper that was made earlier today. And this concerns the work that we did a while ago. We started this when we were developing the 2020 program. And back then, I tried to put together some of the key scenarios that could take place in Russia, depending on the policy that is chosen. To be more precise, a policy is selected, and then this policy would cause certain consequences after a certain time. This may be a matter for debate, but the consequences that would be incurred based on the policy options that are chosen, there is no way to predict what's going to happen. There are a lot of details that need to be taken into account. But back then, and I'm talking about 2012, I decided that there are three possible scenarios that could unfold. The first one is the inertial scenario, where the modernization is imposed from above. We're talking about the modernization that would basically follow the previous line, and that's why it's called the inertial scenario. The second one is a very decisive thrust forward. Again, this was back in 2012, following the events of 2011 and 2012. And that's why I was talking about this decisive thrust forward, jump forward, where the changes in the economy would be prompted from the grassroots with the involvement of the middle class. Mr. Mao has already left, but, well, I would quote from him, because he is quite good at formulating the important factors that would underpin such a leap forward. I had a lot of misgivings because I knew that quite often such decisive leaps may be a synonym for a radical reform that would receive a lot of feedback, and it's impossible to predict what that feedback would be. But it's easy to see that the more radical the thrust forward is, the more severe the lashback is. Certainly the situation unfolded the way it unfolded, but now we relooked at the situation and added the fourth scenario. Oh, I apologize for not mentioning the third one, which would be the gradual development in the direction of democracy. Something that would be a moderate progress. So that was option number 3. And the last thing I wanted to speak about this, we understand that this radical movement forward is something that is an outdated conception. It will not occur anytime soon. So we added the fourth scenario, the so-called mobilization scenario, which is a scenario where certain methods of tightening the bolts, quote unquote, could be expected. Would be unpleasant, and this is something that the citizens would not welcome, and this is something that is best averted. So there could be measures that would need to be taken that would demobilize those leaders that could be the source of such a process. So these are the 4 scenarios that we looked at, and based on that we did some polling of the experts, and I would like to emphasize the word experts here. I could certainly do some broader polling, hoping that you would get a more objective result, but I don't have a lot of confidence in the mass polling. I believe more in the polling of the people that are professionals in a particular given field, and once asked the question they would determine with more precision what should be expected. So here I'm showing you a table. We polled 32 experts, and I'll be very frank, we have the entire list showing their titles, where they work. They're all very decent people, people of good standing. Many of them were present here in this room in the morning. So we offered them the 4 scenarios I mentioned. Those are the scenarios for a policy choice: the inertia scenario, which was the continuation of the 2003-2013 13 policies. The mobilization scenario, the tightening of the bolts, a harshening of the inertial option, followed by the third option, which is the radical leap forward, radical changes towards the overall liberalization of the economy. And the fourth scenario that we offered them for their analysis was the gradual development scenario, and would deal with the same issues as the radical leap scenario, but would do this gradually and on the basis of absence of confrontation, and rather would be built on the interaction with all of the different parts of the population and citizenship. So the rapid radical changes versus the gradual reform. Then we asked the experts to answer the following two questions that had to do with the choice of the economic policy. The policy was not to be chosen by them, but this is something we offered them to consider. They were asked to assess the probability and the preferability, and we would assign 100 points to each. So the results are as follows. The inertial option, which is the continuation of the 2003-2013 policies, the probability of that happening, that beginning in 2016 such policy would be pursued, was assessed by the experts as equal to 45.3%. As for the preferability, the number there was 26. So the expectation that this is the line that will be chosen was almost a half, but a quarter thought that would be a preferable scenario. The mobilization scenario had the probability in the eyes of the experts of 28.3%, and the preferability was equal to 12. A decisive leap forwards, fast and radical changes. The probability was assessed at 6.7%. You see this on the screen. And the preferability was seen as something that is equal to 70%, or 70 points. So as you can see, the first two scenarios from the standpoint of expectations on the part of the experts, they have a high degree of probability in their assessment, but their preferability in their eyes, again, is quite low. And the last two scenarios, the leap forward with the liberalization and democratization, and the gradual development, they have pretty good numbers in terms of preferability. Now, we looked at the consequences that a particular policy would result in the economy over a period of 3 to 5 years. And there were three options given for each scenario. How this would affect a growth, stagnation, or a decline. And you can see on the screen in this table the probability of growth in the inertial scenario is 11.2%. Stagnation was assessed at 53.6%, and the decline was looked at as 35.2%. For the mobilization scenario, the numbers were respectively 8% for growth. Stagnation was assessed at 34.8%, and decline is the highest number here, equal to 57.3%. Now, as far as the decisive leap forwards is concerned, the consequence of growth was estimated at 52.9, stagnation at 22.7, and decline at 24.4. And finally, as far as the gradual development scenario is concerned, the values are similar, 47.3 for growth, 37% for stagnation, and 15.7 for decline. I must say that this is the tool that we use quite often, but you cannot always count on getting such good results, and I have hopes that at least this gives us an understanding of how things would unfold, what awaits us. As we can see, in those circles of experts that we got involved, we dealt with the people that are primarily researchers and people also engaged in the business side. We may say that they are more inclined to be liberal. And if we, did you ask people from the prosecutor's office? They are an important part of our elite. I agree with that statement, but we can probably conduct a separate poll. I don't have access to the prosecutor's office as experts. I dealt with the people that I primarily interact with as part of my job. So I wanted to poll those people that have some professional relation to the economic issues. In that sense, they are more knowledgeable about this, although I would concede that the prosecutor's office employees have a better understanding how to deal with people that have been implicated in criminal activities and so on. So the bottom line is, as far as the probabilities are concerned for the near term, and we emphasize this, we're talking about near-term consequences for the period of 3 to 5 years. Something that would follow the adoption of these very important decisions, the probability is assessed higher for the first two scenarios. And these are the options or the two scenarios that are being implemented in a sense and in effect. As for the other two scenarios, they seem to be more desirable for the people that we polled. However, they do not think highly about the probability of them actually occurring. And if they could occur, then they could result in more productive effects and results for the development of our country. I personally believe that probably the best fitting scenario would be the gradual change, the gradual development scenario, because we need to try to choose those paths and directions of our development so that we do not create any conflicts that could be created by some radical changes or radical measures and radical protests that took place in the fall of 2011 and in the spring of 2012. They prompted a particular response from the government. This is something that could have been avoided, in my personal opinion, although there are very few people that want that to happen. We are generally more inclined towards more radical changes. But this summation of the experts' opinions is something that we did for the first time in our academic history, and we hope that we're going to be able to settle on something more reasonable. Thank you very much. This completes my part of the presentation. That was the completion of the paper made.
Colleagues, we are coming to an end. I would like to make comments to what Evgeny Grigorievich said. Clearly, scholars and business people are more liberal. They have a feeling of the economy. I would like to draw your attention to the following. We have very few people who believe that we have a probability of change. With a very poor state of the economy, with unsatisfied elite with the level of political life, people believe that the probability of a change scenario is low. Look at the way people look at the different scenarios. We think this is a confirmation of the overall approach of our presentation. We assumed that we will not describe the optimum path of reforms. This has been done many times. We see what happened to the presidential decrees of 2012. All the government resources have been throwing at implementing them, but the elites have shown quite a bit of resistance, and the messages of the authorities have really not had much effect. Even if a solution seems to be good, it does not mean that it will be materialized. When we can find a good trade-off, a good combination of interests, then a program may become successful. Mr. Graf's reform has done exactly that. Interests of many different groups have been met. Today, we are looking at a situation in very realistic terms. We do believe that there is a very high probability of the high inertia scenario. I do not believe in mobilization scenario. We said in the presentation that it would be against the interests of most elites. It will not just bring poor economic results. It really hurts very many elites. Therefore, it is going to be blocked just like a radical social transformation scenario. The people will use the method of trial and error, and they will stick consistently to the bad institutions, including distribution mechanisms, including the demands for subsidies. We have no doubt about that. Only when the government support reduces very significantly, then rational people will understand that it's not making any sense any longer. And it makes sense to switch to a different mode. However, it's going to take time. Similarly, We could not say it due to the lack of time. We tried to build a timeline for different steps needed to arrive to a new balance. It may be 2 or 4 years, depending on how we go about the reserve fund. We will go to the low inflation phase, which will also offer more affordable loans. We are going to see a quick dismantling of offshore instruments. When we are talking about a change in the level of pressure on business, much depends on the will of the president to conduct such changes. And I think we're talking about decades. It may be 15 years or 70 years. Russia is going to take a long time building and implementing new institutions and walking away from old institutions. That's where we once again have to look at possible traps or dead alleys in the path of our development. Thank you to everyone.
Коллеги, 12, то есть через несколько минут начнется сессия по инновациям. Дворкович ее будет вести в доме напротив 311. А здесь 12:30 будет доклад тоже Высшей школы экономики о социальном развитии, очень интересный, очень. Мы имели больше времени на его подготовку, чем на вот этот.